Hey guys, it's Tails, and today I'm here to talk to you about wankverts. Now, already I hear you ask, what's a wankvert? Well, a wankvert occurs when a company is so pleased with its own existence, it can no longer contain its excitement, which then explodes into a 2 to 5 minute television advert, which exists for no other reason than said company's self-pleasure. These ejaculations are usually Christmas-themed, but tend to occur prematurely in November. Today, we're focusing on John Lewis's Christmas wankvert, which follows the theme of their previous ones, watered-down children's cartoons. Last year it was Diet Pingu, the year before it was Diet Winnie the Pooh, and this year it's Diet Clangers. Now, if you haven't seen the advert, I implore that you click the link in the description and do so. Otherwise, this will make absolutely no sense, and you'll just end up thinking that the sequel to The Martian looks shit. Speaking of which, Matt Damon must have been a whiny little crybaby, as Mr. Moonman here clearly demonstrates that he's able to breathe on the moon, which is in a vacuum and doesn't even have an atmosphere, while Mars does. Obviously, the events of this advert are impossible, because as we all know, Eggman blew up half the moon about 14 years ago. He blew half the moon away. But we'll look over that small oversight and carry on our critique. Now, the first and most obvious question is, who is Mr. Moonman and how did he get there? The answer is a lot simpler than you might think. In 1969, Apollo 11 landed in a region known as the Sea of Tranquility, giving Neil Armstrong and Buzz Aldrin the distinction of being the first man on the moon. Now, not many people seem to remember, but there was a third man on that mission. I don't know his name, you don't know his name, and that's because he stayed. I managed to acquire a copy of the shuttle's Manifesto, which contains bricks, blocks, mortar, joists, and everything else you need to build a house. No one could quite work out why the third astronaut wanted these, until now. The next question is, how does he get power? Well, unless he has a really long extension cord, it must be solar power. With no atmosphere to protect it, the moon is buffeted by a lot of solar radiation. But that raises a question as to why it hasn't fried Mr. Moonman. Well, obviously he's superhuman. It's the only explanation. That's probably why he's able to look back at Earth. I bet he doesn't even need the bloody telescope. Speaking of telescopes, this girl is a genius. Not quite of my caliber, of course. She hasn't built a plane or a spaceship, but she's like, what, 7? And she's already developed one of the most powerful telescopes ever. Look how crystal clear the surface of the moon is through it. I know what you're going to say, but Tails, the Hubble Space Telescope can see millions of miles into space. Yeah, but it's like 100 times bigger. If this were 100 times bigger, not only would we be able to find alien life within a week, we'd be able to read the small print on their newspapers. And then she exceeds herself when she makes an even smaller, but just as powerful telescope, which she then gives to Mr. Moonman. Now, this may warm your heart at first, but it's actually cause for concern. Sure, it starts with a well-meaning wave, but sooner or later, he'll start watching her in her sleep. Then we'll move on. He could be watching you right now. All the intelligence agencies in the world can't compare to Mr. Moonman now, and the police can't do anything. Operation Yewtree can't reach the moon. Jimmy Savile dreamed of this telescope. And if he gets some sort of rifle to attach to that, we're all screwed. He'll be the most effective hitman in history. Moving on slightly, we need to establish how he got the telescope. Because I don't care if they were filled with helium, kerosene, or fairy dust. Those balloons are not breaking through Earth's atmosphere, making it to the moon, and then landing right outside Mr. Moonman's front door. I bet you couldn't hit someone walking by your window with a book, yet here she is, delivering first-class mail to the moon. Royal Mail, take notes. Hire her if you have to. Obviously, it raises the question of how does she do it? Well, as already established, she's a genius, because they didn't need to break the atmosphere, because she teleported them. It's the only explanation. Not only has she built 2 of the world's most powerful telescopes, but also the first teleporter. I can see a theme with her inventions. Maybe next she'll build a telephone so that she can call him. As a final note, I want to make not a scientific criticism, but a social one. The only thing clearer than the surface of the moon for the telescope is the disdain in which Mr. Moonman looks back at Earth with, presumably because he never has any visitors. Well, here's a word of advice. If you're the sort of person who gets irritated if people don't come to see you or forget about you, don't live on the fucking moon! And that's all I have to say on the subject. Without a shadow of a doubt, I've silenced all the critics that claimed this Wankford was scientifically inaccurate. Thank you for your time, and remember, watch out for Moon Pedo. Good night. Sonic Comic Parodies does not accept any responsibility for people hit with books as a result of comments made in the video, though we would find it fucking hilarious.